Let's talk more about strings and lists. We have already introduced what are strings and what are lists in Python. And one of the important differences between strings and lists are that strings are immutable. So what does that mean? So if you try to change a string, then it won't let you do it. Python is going to give you an error. So this is what we call our immutable quantities in Python, which just means that you cannot change it. And similarly, tuples are also objects in Python that are immutable. If you try to change these objects, Python is not going to let you do that. Whereas lists, we've seen that are mutable. In other words, you can change lists. And all of these objects are iterable quantities, which means that each element of these objects have a number associated with it, which is called an index. Now, a few things. So this is just repetition of what we have learned about strings. So again, when you have to index a string, so here's a sample string or hello world. Then you can remember that when you type in the last one, right? So this is gonna extract out elements 6 to 10, not 11, right? So this is gonna extract out 6 till the end, so you get the same thing, right? And when you start with a colon, it means that you're going to start from the beginning of the string to index number 4. So this is 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, and similarly, this is also 0 to 4. So same thing. This means that you want the last element of the string, and this means that you are going from 3 to -3. So again, this one again is a tricky one, right? So you start with 3, so this is 0, 1, 2, 3, right? And if you start from the right hand side, -1, -2, right? So it doesn't go to -2, it stops before that. So it starts from this point 3 and then goes up till -3. If you type -2 here, it stops before that. Okay, so again, these are a recap of lists. This is another, again, a sample list, just a combination of objects, and we use square brackets for this. Indices again start with 0, and you can also change the element of a list. So now this is a mutable quantity, so you can change the element of a list. So when you type in an index over here, it's going to change the first element or index 0 element to true. This is you're changing the last element to 7, so your updated list is this, where these are the ones that you changed. And if you want to change like multiple elements of a list, you can also do that. You can, so let's say that you want to change the 0th element, and you want to change the first element. So this is going to change from 0 to 1, elements with 0 indexes 0 and 1 to 27. So you can see that it has replaced 2 elements of the index of the list with the number 27. So this way you can replace multiple elements of a list with a single number, but make sure you have these square brackets. These square brackets are going to replace multiple elements with a single one. So you can also redefine the whole list, or you can just use the name of the list and change it to this. You can also replace elements. So if let's say you want to change the element with index 2 up till the end with a string, right? So Python is automatically going to convert it into a list and then place it. So this is index 0, this is 1, right? So what you're saying over here is replace the element with index 2 and everything after that with this string, and so it replaces it with the elements of the string. It converts it into a list and then replaces the elements in the list. Now, if you so notice that if you try to do it without the square brackets, we have used square brackets over here. If you don't use square brackets, what's going to happen is Python is not going to let you do that. You should have an iterable quantity over here. So list is an iterable, string is an iterable quantity, And so if you don't have that, Python is going to complain about it. A few of the functions, list functions that we have looked at. So if you have a list again, so we're just going to take the sample list. If you want the index of the element 17, you can see that 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So it returns 4. You can count how many times a certain element occurs in the list. So this is 5 occurs only once, so you get 1 as the output. You can sort a list also, and you can reverse a list also. So you can see that this list, the sort function, an important thing to remember about, if you use the dot sort function, it changes the original list. You don't have to redefine, give it another name, but you can also use sorted, right? And then the list name, list 1, let's say, and that is not gonna change the original list. You need to redefine redefine a new list. Okay, so here you can see that the original list that we started with has changed. It has been sorted, and then if you reverse it, that sorted list is now reversed with this starting with this element A at the beginning, and then a 1 is at the end now. So now something in addition that we haven't looked at is how do you define a list of lists, right? So this is more like when you have like a table or a spreadsheet that you're trying to make. And so you can see that this is a list, and within that list, each element of this list is also a list of GPAs and ages of students. And so this whole thing has an index of 0, this whole thing has an index of 1, this whole thing has an index of 2, right? And then if you want to sub-index, so you can see that if we type in a 1 over here, you get Bill's age and GPA. And then if you want to further index this, so we have defined it as this list element as a variable called row, and then if you want to further index row, there's a sub index over here. This is 0, 1, 2, right? So if you do that, if you choose 2 over here, you can see that you get 3.55 as the output. You can directly do that also. This is going to give you element of so this is list 1, which is this index, and then element 2 of list 1, and so that's again also 3.55. So you can do it the longer way, or just type in 2 numbers in 2 square brackets. Okay, now coming back to more advanced things that you can do with strings. So there is a way that you can use to skip elements, or in a string. It's like particular syntax. Obviously, there are algorithms. These are just concise ways to do different things, but obviously there are algorithms within these operations that you perform over here. So we'll talk more about algorithms later on, but that's the more important thing when you're doing programming, right? That you should know how to write an algorithm. But for now, let's look at the syntax on how to do different sophisticated things with a string. So if you want to, let's say, skip an element of a string, you can do that. So the 2 colons are used to do these type of things. It's also used to reverse a string. So if you type in 2 colons and the 2, it means that you have to take a step of 1. So you're going to skip 1 element. So you can see that it starts from 0, index 0, and then 2, and then 4, and then 6, and so on. And so if you run this, you see that you get first H is printed out, then L, then O, and then you get this string. If you want to skip to the third, you can use 3. So it's going to start with H, and then it's going to jump to 3, right? Index 3. So it's going to do L, and then W, and then so on. You can see H, L, W, L. Right, and then you can also type in a -1 that is going to reverse the list. If you type in -2, it starts from the it reverses the string, and then it also skips the same way in the backward direction, with a step of 2. Okay. Now let's look at tuples. So we talked about tuples. Tuples are like lists, but as I said, they're immutable, which means that you cannot change tuples. So you can define a tuple like this, or you can use parentheses also. So with tuples, you can do almost anything with a tuple that can be done with the list. The only important thing is that you cannot change it. So if you try to, let's say, change the element of a tuple, element index 1 to 8, Python is not gonna let you do it. It says that object does not support item assignment, which means it is an immutable object. Now let's say you want to create, so this is something, again, an important thing that you come across in Python, is that if you, let's say, want to create a copy of a list. Now one of the tricky things is that, so let's say that you define two lists, A and B. Now you create a copy of B and you say C equals B. And what happens is that if you try to change C, if you create a copy this way, and you try to change C, you're going to change B also. So this way it's like, a carbon copy. So you don't want to do that unless you really want it, unless your algorithm wants it. But typically when you create a copy, you want to sometimes test different things in the copy and make sure that the copy doesn't change the original thing, right? So if you want to do that, you can do it a few ways. You can say D equals, let's say, A, and then square brackets and then colon. That's going to create what we call a shallow copy. You can also do it this way, and this is the more common way you'll see it. D equals A dot copy and then empty parentheses. So this way you can see that when we change D, A is not changed. So they're like independent copies. A shallow copy means that they're independent copies. Some easy things with a list. Again, we've looked at this when you're iterating over a list. So remember we have seen how to iterate over the list. So this is just a quick review. When you iterate over a list, you can do two things. You can say, okay, for I in range, right? And then you can say length of A, right? Okay. So that's when you do that and you say print, right? You can say A of I, right? So what's that going to do is that's going to print out all the elements of a list. But notice that you're using the length of this list is 4, right? So this number is 4. So you're going from numbers from 0 to 3 in that, and then you're iterating over the list and then printing out the element of a list. But you can see that this syntax is much easier. In a lot of cases, you don't need to do the range thing and then index over here. Just Python will automatically do it if you say for I in A. So just type in the name of the list, print I. And so Python is automatically going to iterate over the whole list. And similarly for strings. So if you say for I in S, right, and then print I, you can see that it's going to print out the each element of the list on a new line, and you don't have to do the longer way unless you really want to do something else with the index. If you just want to do a simple thing, this is an easier format, so make sure you stick with this.